And that kind of, I've always asked the question. I mean, we're one race. Why are we split into a couple of categories of blood systems? I mentioned the descendants of the gods earlier on. I've heard theories of
Yeah,
Rh negatives, descending from the Nephilim or the Anunnaki. I mean, is
right.
there any truth in that?
I think there could be. Um, certainly there's some theories out there that say that that is a possibility of where the Rh negative bloodline originated. So if that indeed were the case, then that opens a whole lot of other scenarios that we could really look at. Well, was it done intentionally? Was this a mutation that was done to have an ongoing connection to the gods, as you
Hmm.
mentioned? That's a theory that is very interesting. We've also found that there has been some research that traces it back actually much, much earlier, to, say, the Anunnaki, which is like 400 to 500,000 years ago. Well, if you take that theory, that just blows everything out of the water we've ever
Yeah.
learned in our history.
Yep.
So, and now it becomes a whole different ballgame. And then there's other theories that say, well, the Rh negative blood has only been around for a few thousand of years. And so, if that's the case, where did it come from? We've been told and taught in school that, all human races kind of originated in South Africa, or at least in that region.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, this Rh negative bloodline just appears
Yeah.
in Europe. Well, did it? Or was it just discovered in Europe at that time? That's up for debate. I happen to think that it could be a combination of a few things. I think, certainly the Anunnaki and the Nephilim, whatever the gods that you want to refer to, could have had some sort of origination there with the Rh negative. We know that the Anunnaki came to Earth, they mined for gold. There's a lot of theories that say that we actually are the slave
Hmm.
species for the Anunnaki. So we also know that some of the Anunnaki took earthly wives. So that could be an easy way to trace back the bloodline if you wanted to go that route. So let's just take that little theory for example. So let's say that the Anunnaki were in fact the originator of the bloodline.
Yep.
Well, through time, and I've researched this because it's so fascinating. When you look at some of the royal families, let's take the British royal family. Did you know that they're Rh negative?
No, not until I read it the other day.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Also, there's been a whole lineage of the U.S. presidents going all the way back to Truman. Every single U.S. president has Rh negative blood. Interesting.
Yeah. What's interesting with the royal family then, if I mean, if that's something that they know, and when they intermarry with other, well, marry other people, I wonder whether they're on the search for, say, the brides for the princes, whether they're on the search for girls or women with Rh negative blood to kind of keep that lineage
Keep it
pure.
going. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because do you remember? Oh, it's been years ago now. They don't do it anymore. But we used to have blood tests before we got married.
Yep.
When you applied for your marriage certificate, you had to have a blood
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason for a blood test. The blood test was specifically for the Rh factor. So there's probably something to that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Well, it
I,
fascinates me that, like an area, near the Pyrenees mountain range, and you talk about Basque, and with such a high concentrate of Rh negatives. But I was wondering, um, uh, I mean, do Rh negatives spread out against all different skin colors, or are they concentrated with Caucasian?
it's primarily Caucasian, which that's a very interesting statistic in and of itself as well. Because we know that people marry people of all different races and nationalities. I mean, that's the world. So it makes you wonder, why is it only dominant in
Yeah.
that one sector of the world? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. That's something I'm still researching. But
Right.
there's some interesting physical and personality traits that are specific to Rh negative. One being that the Rh negative blood cannot be cloned. So I could not be cloned, for example. I think that's kind of cool. Personally, I think that's kind of a neat thing. I don't know. I'm unique, I guess. So if you look at it from a scientist standpoint, that must be really frustrating to them
Yeah.
because they cannot clone Rh negative people. And that's kind of a mind-blowing statement because we're able to clone dogs and all these other animals, and I know that they're trying to clone humans, and I think they actually have, or at
Yep.
least organs at least. So if you can't clone an Rh negative person, that really throws out the whole theory of it being a mutation. Because if it were a mutation, we know how to get around things like that in science, and we've done it in laboratories. So I think that's a real interesting little characteristic that's unique to Rh negative blood. There's other things such as an extra vertebrae,
Yep.
extra rib. That's a very unique thing. There's also a heightened or increased intuitive and psychic abilities. I know myself, I have that. I know that others that I've talked to also have that. There's also, in history, there's a lot of people that are Rh negative that have really done some amazing things besides the presidents and the royal family. But you have Tesla. Tesla was Rh negative.
Hmm.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. It really does open up that envelope to think, well, okay, so if there is any sort of connection to the extraterrestrial lineage, it makes you wonder if maybe those individuals, that whether it's the U.S. presidents or British family or Tesla, if those individuals were somehow privy to
Hmm.
some information, either unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever you want to say. But I don't know. It's really a fun thing to kind of
Yeah.
explore. You start making all these little connections, and
Yep.
these
Yep.
dots start to line up, and you're like, wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was reading a book the other day, and theories that the Levite priests had special characteristics of the Rh negative types, and Jesus himself as well.
Yes, yes. So again, there's a lot of theories out there as to, what or who was Jesus. There's a lot of theories that say that he was extraterrestrial. Well, if he was, then that kind of
Hmm.
follows in suit with what we're talking about. Is it something that has come about through the beginning of time? Is it this bloodline that started? Or is it something that was introduced later through DNA manipulation and hybridization? It could be either,
Yeah.
or it could be a little bit of both. I do know that Rh negative is dwindling in numbers, though. It's not the 15% that we once were. It's more like 10.
Right. Right.